It's hard to believe that the last time I stood before you was in this way was October 20th, 2023. We were all still in shock, reeling from the horrors that we never imagined we would face again. I spoke then about the need for light and unity, and I still hold fiercely to that message. This week's Parsha, Tazria-Metzora, brings us back to fundamental questions of purity and impurity, both physical and spiritual. Among the lessons we encounter is the impact of Lashon Hara, the evil tongue, gossip, slander, and we learn how words can contaminate not just individuals, but communities. Isolating people can have devastating consequences, a truth recognized deeply within Jewish tradition. The Torah teaches in Genesis that it is not good for man to be alone, acknowledging that human beings are created for connection and community. Rabbinic texts emphasize, Kol Yisrael arevim ze bazeh. All of Israel is responsible for one another, highlighting the ethical obligation to ensure that no one is left out or abandoned. The Torah teaches us that just as physical afflictions like tza'arat could isolate and harm, so too can careless speech, words that injure, divide, or destroy. These lessons aren't locked in the ancient world, they are urgently needed today. One painful example is what we see regarding Israel. We witness a flood of slander, accusations of genocide, claims of deliberate starvation, and allegations of deliberate targeting of civilians. These lies spread like wildfire across social media, university campuses, and even the halls of governments. They fuel hatred and confusion, not only damaging Israel's reputation, but harming every one of us who loves her. When false information spreads, it puts us all at risk, including our seniors, our youth, our children. Take this article that I read last weekend as an example. It talks about a child's soccer league here in the city, a soccer league for 11-year-olds. This resonated particularly for me since it's the age of our son. This article describes a horrible occurrence that happened after a club practice just a few weeks ago. 5 boys chased and bullied an 11-year-old boy, demanding him to say, "Free Palestine." This brave boy tried to evade the group and actually speaking up and saying that he supported Israel. Despite his efforts to avoid further conflict, the group chased him and restrained him and bullied him until he repeated what they wanted. It speaks directly to youth hearing and witnessing the spreading of misinformation and using it in harmful, threatening, and dangerous ways. This is what happens when false information and stories run rampant. It threatens us in ways we can't even imagine, and it happens over and over. This is not an isolated incident. This is Lashon Hara on a global scale, and it reminds us why the Torah is so concerned with the power of speech. Falsehoods spoken once can ripple outward, shaping perceptions, policies, and destinies. Yet the Torah doesn't leave us only with warnings, it also gives us tools. It urges us to build fences around our words, to ask before speaking. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? It asks us to guard our tongues as fiercely as we would guard our homes or our loved ones. In the Torah, the punishment for spreading gossip was tza'arat, as we heard, a skin condition that most commonly is translated as leprosy or some type of skin disease. And the afflicted person would have to be isolated from the community, something quite serious, isolation, in order for the person to understand the seriousness of Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is viewed by our sages as one of the worst sins that a person can commit. Why is it viewed so strictly? Because it is an abuse of the unique gift that distinguishes humans from all other living things, the power of speech. I'd like to share with you the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. This is the most famous midrash about the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem that happened during the 1st century CE. The story appears in the Babylonian Talmud and tells of a wealthy Jewish man who sent his servant to deliver an invitation for a party to his friend, a man named Kamsa. However, the servant made a mistake, and he delivered the invitation to someone else, a man named Bar Kamsa, who was in fact an enemy of this wealthy man. When this wealthy man saw his enemy Bar Kamsa at his party, he had him removed from the party in a humiliating way. Bar Kamsa, embarrassed, went to the Roman emperor claiming that he had news that the Jews were planning a revolt against the entire Roman Empire. However, this was lashon hara. It was gossip. It was false. And it was done for the sake of getting revenge against the host who had humiliated him. Things happened, got out of control, and ultimately led to the destruction of the temple. We can apply these lessons personally too. Imagine yourself in a joyful gathering, catching up with friends, reconnecting after time apart. In the excitement, stories start flowing. But before sharing something about another, the Torah reminds us to pause. Is this story necessary? Is it true? Could it cause harm? We are taught not only to refrain from evil speech, but to actively protect the dignity of others, and thus help maintain the purity of our communities. So what does purity look like when faced with war and hatred? Here I think of a powerful concept I learned when I was volunteering in the Israeli army. Tohar haneshek, the purity of arms. This principle, embedded in the very spirit of the Israeli Defense Forces since before the establishment of the State of Israel, insists that soldiers act with moral restraint even in the chaos of battle. It demands that force be used only as necessary, that enemy civilians be protected, and that human dignity be honored, not because it is easy, but because it is right. The IDF's code is rooted not only in modern law, but also in Jewish ethics. As the guide states, IDF servicemen and women will use their weapons only for the purpose of their mission, only to the necessary extent, and will maintain their humanity even during combat. The goal is not simply to avoid wrongdoing, it is to actively uphold the highest moral standards, even when under threat. King Solomon tells us in Proverbs, "If your enemy falls, do not rejoice." Similarly, at the Red Sea, when the Egyptian army drowned, the angels themselves wanted to sing. But God said, "My creations are drowning, and you want to sing?" Even the downfall of our enemies must be not with celebration, but with sober reflection. This is purity. Not the absence of conflict, but the refusal to let conflict harden our hearts. Not passivity, but ethical clarity. The constant work of choosing restraint over rage, dignity over vengeance, humanity over hatred. So what does this mean for us? It means that in our speech, our actions, and our hearts, we are called to uphold purity. When anger flares, when frustration tempts us to lash out, when sadness tempts us to despair, we remember human dignity is our highest value. We remember that every person, even the one who opposes us, is made in the image of God. This Shabbat and every day, may we recommit ourselves to that path. May we guard our tongues. May we lift up truth and dignity. May we resist the easy roads of anger and scorn, and instead walk the harder, holier path of tahara, of purity. May we be a light to others, and may that light grow until it fills the world with peace. Shabbat Shalom.